Hey guys, hi, welcome back once again. My name is Vaishali, and having learned quite a few things from, through, and from within human interactions, and having pursued and completed my master's in business administration and in clinical psychology, and to a degree, having done quite a bit of self reflection as well, I today wish to talk about how our relationships, interpersonal relationships, impact and affect us in ways in which they are consciously available to us and in ways in which they are not so consciously available to us, wherein the work of the subconscious and the unconscious comes into the picture, wherein the dynamics of the subconscious and the unconscious comes into the picture. So there's a beautiful quote that goes something like this, that if it's hysterical, it's historical as well. And many a times hysterical or the image of hysterical would come up for us would be somebody who's going all over the place, would be somebody who's lost control of themselves, would be of somebody who's not in charge of themselves, would be of somebody who's shouting and who's creating a chaos, would be of somebody who looks like a bull charging towards us, physically or not. But the feeling of it comes across like this person is now about to charge, is now about to run rampant, or is just running rampant. And while that may be one of the ways to consider hysteria or to consider a hysterical outburst, can also look like shutting down, can also look like avoidance, can also look like escapism. And again, given my personal understanding of it, in that case of hysteria, the projection of it may not be so much outwards. The look of it may not be so external with regards to being all over the place, with regards to your nervous system being extremely dysregulated, with regards to the external outbursts of all sorts of emotions, of all sorts of thoughts, of all sorts of feelings. But on some level, on the other hand, that kind of a thing may be happening internally. Internally, that person might be feeling all over the place. Their nerves might be feeling out of the place. Their nerves or the nervous system might be feeling overwhelmed, a little chaotic on the inside. But the external projection at times can look like avoidance, can look like escapism. For even they are feeling so overwhelmed that the only way they know how to operate is to close themselves out, is to shut themselves out, is to stop the interaction. Despite giving or projecting the external appearance of being in calm and being in control, they essentially are trying to stop the interaction that to them feels overwhelming. And quite naturally, when that is happening, we are being triggered. And like Dr. Gabor Mate would say, which I'll be paraphrasing here, that if something is triggering you, that if something is instigating you, it is inside of you already. The moment is just presenting its reality of your hysteria that is already historically present in you. For it's acting like that gun and can only be triggered, can only come into action when it is loaded, when it is internally loaded with a bullet. For unless it's not internally loaded with the bullet, it can't actually be put into action. It can't actually be triggered. It can't produce any reaction as well. It'll not be able to fire anything internally or even externally. So the beautiful part of any trigger, of anything that bothers us and creates a hysterical reaction, whether on the outside or on the inside, whether it's through huge outbursts of emotions, of thoughts, of feelings, or whether it's creating that hysteria inside, the feeling of overwhelm inside, wherein some shut down, wherein some wish to escape, wherein some wish to avoid the situation. The idea after a while, after that hysterical moment passes away to a large degree, is to objectively look at it and ask, what was loaded inside of me, rather what is loaded inside of me, that still feels overwhelmed, that still feels out of control, that still feels so out of proportion that I'm not able to handle it at that point in time. And once we objectively begin to see that, either through self reflection via journaling or through talking about it with somebody who's not judgmental, we'll be able to see the place that it came from. We'll be able to even see the purpose that it was trying to solve, the purpose that it has been trying to solve since our personal history, and then probably even help us reflect if it is really resolving the issue that creates that hysteria or hysterical moments, or is it just recreating and replaying the same thing over and over and over again without actually resolving it? Or is it just like that tape recorder that keeps playing the same song over and over and over again? Maybe not on an everyday basis, but at least quite a few times in our lives. Maybe it can help us build compassion for ourselves that at one point in time in our history, when we were little kids, when we felt powerless and helpless in most situations, or at least in many situations, did help us, did serve a purpose at that point in time. But maybe over a course of time, having unconsciously played it, repeated it so many times unknowingly, we have inbuilt it in our nervous system, in the memories of our nervous system. So now coming back to addressing the topic in question, the topic that I've picked up for today, let's try and look at these pictures. And in a way, it tells us that our sensory organs and our brain and our nervous system learns things through interaction with the outside world. It is the imprinting from the outside world, the messages from the outside world that creates an internal world in the beginning, in the earliest formative years of our lives, till the time we become mature adults. And let me just say it over here that maturity doesn't actually mean getting older. Maturity actually means getting wiser. So, how do we then know that this is a comb and this is a black color? When we first arrive into the world, quite likely, I'm going to assume that many of us do not know that this color is called as black, that this thing is called as a comb, that this color would be called as an orange, peach, or pink color, or something in between. These informations, right from the thing that this is a book, this is the cover page, these are the pages that are off-white in color, that this print is written in white color, that this is the color black, that this thing is called as the comb and it has a certain utility, is all of the information that is coming from the outside. And so is the emotional information as well. The emotional information with what feels emotionally and physically safe to what feels emotionally and physically unsafe. The emotional information with what gives me attention, what gives me love, what keeps people attached to me, to the emotional information with regards to the words, with regards to the tones, with regards to our facial expressions, to our body language, and what does not give me attention, what keeps love away from me, is all also a pack and parcel of that information system that we are constantly receiving from the outside world, that our brain is constantly processing, that our nervous system is constantly processing, which is all coming from the outside world. And so, in a way, when the outside world triggers something within us, when the outside world or any interaction from the outside world feels a little overwhelming to the internal world, which then creates that hysterical reaction of either shutting down, of either withdrawing, of either trying to escape, or of being aggressive and all over the place. It, in a way, is internally directing us to do our inner work, to unload that gun that has been loaded a long time back. Which also brings me to a beautiful point that maybe you were not born with that trigger. Maybe it didn't start with you, but it was implanted in you. It got inbuilt in you. And thereby, it is then your responsibility to at least look at it before deciding that you've still got to keep it loaded or you've got to unload it as well. Or you can choose when to load it up and when to unload it as well. So then, how do we do the work? The title of the book by Dr. Nicole LaPera, which I'm borrowing for this particular video. So just a few days back, I'd gone with a friend of mine to watch the movie Huck. And by the time the movie reached the interval point, this friend of mine had been very silently crying and wiping her tears, very silently feeling very agitated, very silently feeling very angry as well. And during the interval, she told me that I'll not be able to watch the movie. You please sit and watch, and I'm going to leave. And because I wanted to watch the movie with her and probably to some degree also provide her some support while she was having this internal struggle, watching the narrative of the movie, which kind of in a way reminded her of her own personal narrative, of her experienced narrative. It felt like a very personal story to her, which is why I also wanted her to sit with me, to be able to feel it, then to be able to deal with it, to then gradually be able to heal it, at least to a large degree, wherein the grip of the trigger becomes a little less loose on her. The intensity of that trigger loosens its grip on her. And because her personal story has been very close to the story narrated in the movie Huck, at least to some degree, triggered a wound inside of her, I just held her hand, told her that I think it would be better if she sits through the movie because I'm there with her, that she sees the courage, the resiliency of this lady, that she sees the dignity and the grace with which this lady holds the situation, goes through the life situations, and the strength of character and integrity that this lady demonstrates, along with the support that her father provides her, on whose shoulders she can lean on whose shoulders she can stand for, to rise above her adversity, is something that needs to be watched, is something that needs to be considered. And when I asked her as to what triggered so much of a reaction, which was happening on a very silent mode, wherein she was feeling overwhelmed, but was wiping her tears in the darkness, was wiping her tears so that nobody could notice it, was sobbing so silently that her voice almost could not be heard. And when I asked her as to what caused this kind of a reaction, she beautifully said that at any point in time now, when people take other people for granted, when a man takes a woman for granted, whoever that man is, in whatever kind of relationship that man is in, as a father, as a husband, as a boyfriend, as a brother, and when, because the woman has been taken for granted, she's lost her dignity, she's lost her respect, and she's just become a means of convenience, is something that triggers me, is something that angers me, is something that irritates me, that agitates me, is something that hurts me. And in a way, speaking it out aloud, sharing it with somebody, probably gave her a direction, probably gave her an understanding and insight as to what truly hurts her. And it can only hurt when we are wounded, whether the wound shows on the outside or not. And if we do not heal our wounds, we bleed onto others. And in a way, this trigger can then be helpful, can then be used more effectively over a course of time to heal the internal wound. And in my understanding, the best question to ask with regards to such internal wounds, with regards to addressing such wounds, would be to first question when I get triggered like this, where I either overreact, wherein I tend to get a little aggressive, a little defensive, or wherein I tend to secretly push everything outside of me, wherein I tend to shut down, to close myself down, to find an escape. How old emotionally do I think am I? What's my internal emotional age? And for most people, it's mostly the first 4, 5, 6, 7 years of their life. For some others, it even extends to 8, 10 years of their earliest lives. And for some others, it can even extend to the first 12 to 13 years of their lives. So once again, the first question, what is my internal emotional age when I tend to get triggered and react in certain ways? To then be able to understand the reality, the experienced reality of that kid, to hold compassion for it. And then the second question would be to ask, what is the kind of support that this kid needed in order to feel physically and emotionally, psychologically safe? And how can I provide this to that child within me that still reacts in hysterical ways? Something which is also called as the inner child. And that support can be given to that child within me from myself as well and from other people as well. And the last question would be, with regards to these images, what did this child hear? What was emotionally imprinted in this child, in this person, that has gotten so inbuilt that it happens like an automatic reaction, a habituated automatic reaction? And what does this little child need to hear differently? From me and other people who are willing to provide their support, to be able to repair and relearn things a little differently, and thereby gradually start to feel a little more physically and emotionally safe, to be able to rest within a safe nervous system that doesn't need to fight or fly away, but can hold itself in more grounded ways, to build safety, to build trust, to build a social support that truly supports. Just like this lady's dad's character in the movie Huck, so that they develop the resiliency to stand on the grounds and to stand for the grounds, that can hold safety space, emotional and physical, for them and for us, on both personal and interpersonal levels. Which is why it is very important to reflect, it is very important to understand, it is very important to know wisely the company that surrounds us and the company that we choose to surround ourselves with, because it is their information, because it is their emotional regulation or dysregulation that kind of impacts us and our nervous system on a very innate level. And we need to have relationships, interpersonal relationships, while making us feel safe and grounded at the same time, which makes us grow without taking us for granted at the same time, which can look familiar but does come with a sense of curiosity and a sense of compassion that can help us be grounded and yet grow and evolve and transform at the same time. Which is why it's also essential to question that whatever is getting triggered inside of you, the wound that is getting reignited when it's touched psychologically, what is that wound telling you about? What was the first time that you felt this kind of a thing? Because if it's happening with this kind of a reaction, with this kind of a triggering impact on the inside, it has to have its story in our history. For when it's hysterical, it's historical. So let's try and look at all of those aspects. Let's try and reflect on ourselves, on our stories, to first acknowledge it, to then appreciate it, to then hold compassion for it, to then be able to rewrite another story. Because once again, only when we are willing to feel it can we begin to deal with it, and can then we begin to heal from it and through it, so as not to be able to bleed on others and ourselves. Let's try and do that for ourselves, and I will see you once again the next week. Till then, stay tuned in. And guys, if you do like the contextual content of these videos, please do like, share, and subscribe.